Tonight, let us travel slowly into a quieter world. Long before glowing screens, electric lights, crowded cities, and endless nighttime noise, human beings experienced the night very differently. Darkness arrived gradually. Villages became silent. Candlelight flickered softly against wooden walls. Rain tapped gently against rooftops. Fires burned low beside sleeping families. And above them, the night sky stretched endlessly across a world that moved at a much slower rhythm. For most of human history, sleep was not rushed, interrupted, or surrounded by artificial light. The human mind followed softer cycles shaped by moonlight, seasons, weather, firelight, and silence. Tonight, we will explore how people slept before electricity changed the rhythm of human life forever. We will quietly travel through ancient villages, medieval homes, candlelit monasteries, snowy mountain cabins, and peaceful countryside nights where darkness itself became part of ordinary life. We will explore old sleeping habits, nighttime rituals, segmented sleep, firelight dreams, silence, and the gentle rhythm of nights before the modern world remained awake endlessly. This is not a story about danger or urgency. It is simply a slow journey into the quiet nights our ancestors once knew so well. So wherever you are tonight, allow the world around you to grow softer for a while. Dim lights flickered beside wooden walls. Wind moved quietly through distant trees. The stars turned slowly overhead. And somewhere far away, another quiet evening was beginning beneath the calm darkness of an older world. Before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy peaceful, long-form nighttime documentaries like this one. And in the comments, tell us where you are listening from tonight and whether you prefer sleeping in complete silence beside rain or with soft sounds in the background. Now, let the night grow quiet around us as we begin our slow journey into how humans once slept before electricity. Act 1. When darkness truly arrived. For most people living today, true darkness has become surprisingly rare. Cities glow throughout the entire night. Streetlights stretch endlessly across roads and neighborhoods. Screens remain illuminated until the final moments before sleep. Even in quiet homes, small lights continue blinking softly from clocks, televisions, routers, and distant windows outside. But for nearly all of human history, night arrived very differently. As the sun slowly disappeared beyond forests, mountains, rivers, and fields, darkness gradually covered the world in silence. Villages dimmed one candle at a time, fires burned lower, conversations softened, and little by little, human life began retreating inward toward warmth, shelter, and rest. Without electricity, darkness carried an entirely different feeling. It was not simply the absence of daylight, it became a natural boundary shaping the rhythm of human existence itself. In small medieval villages, nighttime often arrived quietly. Wooden homes glowed faintly from candlelight or firelight visible through narrow windows. Smoke drifted slowly upward into the cold evening air. Animals settled into barns and stables nearby. The sounds of tools, carts, and daily labor gradually faded into stillness. Researchers studying historical sleep patterns discovered that most people naturally adapted their routines to the changing light around them. Long before alarm clocks and artificial schedules, the body followed slower biological rhythms tied closely to sunrise and sunset. During winter especially, nights could become remarkably long. In some regions, darkness lasted 14 or even 16 hours. Families gathered near fireplaces, repaired clothing, prepared meals slowly, told stories, read religious texts, or simply rested quietly together while storms or snow moved softly outside. And because artificial light remained limited and expensive, many people slept earlier than modern populations do today. Candlelight itself shaped behavior. A single candle provided only a small circle of warm light. Oil lamps flickered gently. Fireplaces illuminated rooms unevenly with moving shadows across wooden walls and ceilings. The night, therefore, encouraged calmness naturally. There were fewer distractions, fewer interruptions, fewer reasons to remain mentally active deep into the evening. Researchers believe this slower transition into darkness helped regulate human circadian rhythms more naturally than modern environments often allow. As daylight faded, the body gradually increased melatonin production, preparing the mind for sleep little by little. There was no sudden flood of artificial brightness, delaying exhaustion deep into the night. Instead, people often experienced a softer descent into rest. In farming communities, physical labor also shaped sleep patterns strongly. Long hours spent outdoors, walking fields, carrying water, chopping wood, tending animals, or harvesting crops created deep physical fatigue by evening. When night finally arrived, many people welcomed sleep naturally and quickly. But nighttime was not always silent. Wind moved gently against wooden walls. Rain tapped steadily across rooftops. Firewood cracked softly inside fireplaces. Distant church bells occasionally echoed through cold air far away. Horses shifted quietly in stables nearby. Snow pressed softly against rooftops during winter storms. The sounds of the night became part of sleep itself. In many homes, entire families slept together in shared rooms for warmth and practicality. Privacy was rare compared to modern life. Beds were often simple wooden frames stuffed with straw, wool, feathers, or rough fabric, depending on wealth and region. And yet, despite the simplicity, many historical descriptions of nighttime life carry a remarkable sense of stillness. Modern societies rarely experience anymore. Without endless information, endless stimulation, or endless artificial light, darkness slowly encouraged the human mind to quiet itself. As evening deepened, candle flames became softer. Conversations slowed. The outside world disappeared into shadow. And somewhere beneath the calm glow of firelight, the first sleepers quietly drifted into dreams while the ancient night stretched silently overhead. Act 2. The Two Sleeps of the Ancient Night. One of the most surprising discoveries historians made while studying historical sleep habits was that many people in pre-industrial societies may not have slept through the entire night continuously the way modern populations often expect today. Instead, for centuries, countless people experienced what researchers later called segmented sleep, a slower rhythm where the night unfolded in two separate periods of rest, divided by a quiet, waking interval. Historical writings from medieval Europe, old medical texts, personal diaries, court records, and literature frequently mention something called the first sleep and the second sleep. At first, historians overlooked these references entirely because modern culture had largely forgotten the pattern. But over time, researchers realized these references appeared far too consistently across centuries to be accidental. In many regions, people naturally fell asleep a few hours after sunset. Then, sometime during the middle of the night, they quietly woke for a period ranging from several minutes to even a few hours before returning again to what they called the second sleep. This waking period was often calm and unhurried. There were no phones glowing beside the bed, no notifications waiting, no bright electric light flooding the room awake instantly. Instead, people sometimes sat quietly beside fading firelight. Some prayed softly, others reflected on dreams, adjusted the fire, spoke gently with family members, or simply rested peacefully in silence while the world outside remained dark and still. Researchers studying modern sleep laboratories later discovered something fascinating. When people are removed from artificial lighting entirely and exposed only to natural cycles of daylight and darkness for extended periods, segmented sleep patterns sometimes begin appearing naturally again. This suggested that continuous modern sleep may not be the only rhythm the human brain evolved to follow. During these quiet nighttime awakenings, the mind often remained deeply relaxed rather than fully alert. Hormonal activity during darkness created calmer states of consciousness compared to abrupt modern awakenings beneath electric light and stimulation. The world outside also remained profoundly silent. In winter especially, villages rested beneath enormous stretches of darkness. Snow reflected moonlight softly across fields and rooftops. Wind moved gently through bare trees. Somewhere far away, a church bell might echo faintly through the cold night air before silence returned again. Inside small homes, fireplaces glowed low beside sleeping families wrapped beneath heavy blankets and wool. And because nighttime moved more slowly, people often experienced sleep itself differently from modern society. There was less pressure, less urgency, less clock watching. The night unfolded gradually, almost like a tide moving in and out around sleeping communities beneath the stars. For many people living before the arrival of electricity, the middle hours of the night were not necessarily treated as interruptions or problems. Instead, they often became some of the quietest and most reflective moments of the entire day. Historical descriptions suggest that these waking periods carried a calm atmosphere very different from the restless frustration many modern people experience when waking during the night beneath bright clocks and artificial light. Inside small homes illuminated only by fading embers or a single candle, the world moved very slowly. Families sometimes remained half asleep while wind brushed softly against wooden walls outside. In colder regions, heavy blankets and thick curtains helped hold warmth inside, while winter storms drifted silently through the darkness beyond the windows. The night itself felt larger then, stretching far beyond the limited pools of candlelight surrounding each household. Researchers studying historical nighttime behavior found that people used these quiet waking hours in gentle and unhurried ways. Some prayed softly or reflected on dreams they had just experienced. Others adjusted the fireplace, checked animals outside briefly, or shared calm conversations before drifting naturally back into sleep again. There was rarely the feeling that every waking moment needed to be productive or stimulated constantly. This slower rhythm may have affected the emotional experience of sleep itself. Without endless streams of information and artificial brightness forcing the brain into continued alertness, the boundary between waking and sleeping often remained softer and more gradual. The mind drifted more gently between rest, dreaming, silence, and quiet awareness throughout the long night. Scientists who later recreated pre-industrial lighting conditions inside controlled sleep experiments discovered something remarkable. When participants spent extended periods without electric lighting, many naturally developed longer sleep durations, along with nighttime waking periods, resembling the historical descriptions of segmented sleep. Instead of sleeping in one uninterrupted block, the body appeared capable of following older rhythms tied more closely to natural darkness itself. During these nighttime awakenings, researchers also noticed that people often remained unusually calm compared to modern insomnia sufferers. Hormonal patterns during prolonged darkness created states of relaxation where quiet reflection felt natural rather than stressful. In many cases, subjects described the experience as peaceful rather than disruptive. Outside those homes, the ancient night remained profoundly different from the modern world. There were no highways glowing in the distance, no city skylines illuminating the horizon, and no constant mechanical hum surrounding human life. Moonlight reflected across rivers, forests, and empty roads, while villages slept beneath enormous star-filled skies, uninterrupted by artificial light pollution. Travelers moving between towns at night sometimes described seeing only scattered lanterns glowing faintly through distant windows, far away across fields or hillsides. Entire regions disappeared almost completely into darkness after sunset, leaving only firelight, moonlight, and the quiet sounds of nature moving gently through the night air. And perhaps because darkness felt deeper and more complete, sleep itself may have carried a stronger feeling of separation from daytime life. As fires burned lower and conversations faded into silence, the world seemed to slow naturally around those sleeping homes, allowing the human mind to rest within rhythms far older than electricity, schedules, or modern noise. In many parts of the world, nighttime rituals slowly developed around these older rhythms of darkness and rest. Long before modern sleep routines centered around screens, alarms, and artificial lighting, evenings often unfolded through repeated habits designed naturally by climate, candlelight, physical labor, and seasonal change. The transition into sleep became less abrupt and far more connected to the environment surrounding daily life. As evenings settled across villages and countryside roads, people gradually prepared both their homes and their minds for the long darkness ahead. Fires were carefully managed to preserve warmth through the coldest hours of the night. Candles were extinguished one by one to conserve precious wax or oil. Doors were secured quietly against wind and weather, while heavy curtains helped keep warmth inside wooden homes during winter months. Meals also influenced the rhythm of the evening. In farming communities especially, dinners were often simple, warm, and filling after long hours of physical work outdoors. Soups, bread, grains, roasted vegetables, and slow-cooked foods were shared near fireplaces, while conversations softened naturally as exhaustion settled across the room. Children frequently fell asleep beside the fire before being carried gently into bed later in the evening. Researchers studying historical daily life noticed how deeply connected sleep once was to natural environmental cycles. During summer, longer daylight encouraged later evenings and earlier mornings. During winter, people often spent far more time resting indoors beneath extended darkness. Human activity expanded and contracted with the seasons themselves. The atmosphere inside many homes also remained far quieter than modern environments. Without engines, televisions, traffic, or electronic devices constantly demanding attention, the sounds of the night became softer and more organic. Rain tapping against rooftops, logs shifting inside fireplaces, distant animals moving outside, or the faint sound of wind through trees often became part of the sleeping environment itself. In monasteries and religious communities, nighttime followed especially structured rhythms. Monks sometimes woke during the middle of the night for quiet prayer beneath candlelight before returning to sleep again until dawn. Stone hallways remained silent, except for soft footsteps echoing through cold corridors, while snow or rain drifted quietly outside ancient walls. These rituals reinforced the idea that the night was not empty time to escape from, but a calm and contemplative space woven naturally into human life. Even dreams were often treated differently in older societies. Without constant stimulation flooding the brain before sleep, many people paid closer attention to dreams and nighttime thoughts. Some recorded them in journals or discussed them calmly during morning conversations. The boundary between sleep, reflection, memory, and imagination may have felt softer than it often does today. And because darkness arrived more completely, the stars themselves became part of ordinary, nightly life. In many regions, the night sky appeared astonishingly bright before industrial light pollution transformed the modern world. Rivers, forests, fields, and oceans rested beneath enormous constellations, turning slowly overhead, while entire communities slept in near total darkness below. For countless generations, this slower rhythm shaped how human beings experienced rest. The night was not merely a pause between workdays. It became a quiet world of firelight, dreams, silence, weather, stars, and long, uninterrupted darkness, gently surrounding sleeping homes beneath the ancient sky. As historians and sleep researchers continued studying life before electricity, they began realizing something deeper than simple differences in bedtime habits. The entire emotional texture of the night itself had once been different. Darkness moved more slowly. Silence lasted longer. Human attention drifted more gently toward rest because the world surrounding people gradually became quieter together. Modern life rarely allows that kind of transition anymore. Today, the mind often remains flooded with stimulation until the final moments before sleep. Bright screens, endless information, artificial light, constant alerts, and crowded schedules keep the nervous system active long after sunset. The ancient rhythm of darkness arriving naturally around entire communities has mostly disappeared from daily life. But for most of human history, evening unfolded at a softer pace. Villages dimmed gradually beneath candlelight and moonlight. Fires burned low while families rested beside one another in shared rooms, warmed against winter air. Outside, forests, fields, rivers, and empty roads disappeared silently into darkness beneath enormous skies filled with stars. Researchers studying circadian biology increasingly believe that many modern sleep difficulties may partly emerge from how dramatically human environments changed in only a very short period of history. Artificial light extends daytime far beyond natural limits, delaying melatonin production and keeping the brain alert much later into the night. In contrast, older societies followed rhythms more closely aligned with seasonal light and darkness. This does not mean life before electricity was perfect or romantic in every way. Winters could feel harsh. Homes were cold. Nights were long. Firewood needed constant attention. Candlelight was limited. Storms, illness, and uncertainty remained part of everyday life. Yet despite those hardships, many aspects of nighttime carried a slower and quieter emotional atmosphere than the endlessly illuminated world many people experience today. Scientists who study sleep often note that the human brain still responds strongly to darkness, warmth, silence, gentle sound, and predictable nighttime routines. Even now, people commonly relax beside rain, fireplaces, dim lighting, ocean waves, or soft ambient sounds, that resemble older sleeping environments shaped by nature rather than electronics. Perhaps some part of the mind still remembers those older rhythms. The slow fading of daylight, the quiet crackling of firelight, the sound of distant wind moving through trees beyond wooden walls, the calm stillness of villages sleeping beneath moonlit skies. And maybe that is why modern people continue searching for quiet spaces at night, not because the world itself has become louder, but because the human nervous system was shaped for far softer evenings than the modern age usually provides. Tonight, we traveled through candlelit homes, ancient villages, long winter nights, segmented sleep, quiet midnight awakenings, and the gentle rhythm of darkness before electricity transformed human life forever. We explored a world where the night itself encouraged slowness, reflection, warmth, and rest in ways many people rarely experience anymore. Before we continue, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy peaceful, long-form nighttime documentaries like this one. And in the comments, tell us what kind of nighttime atmosphere helps you relax most. Rain, snow, ocean waves, candlelight, or complete silence. For now, the night continues quietly around us, and somewhere beyond the glow of modern cities, darkness still settles softly across forests, mountains, rivers, and sleeping homes, much as it once did centuries ago. Act 3. Sleeping beneath the stars. For most of human history, people lived far closer to the natural world than modern populations do today. The boundaries between indoor life and the outside environment remained thin, especially during the night. Wind, rain, temperature, moonlight, seasonal changes, and distant animal sounds all became part of the ordinary atmosphere surrounding sleep itself. In small rural communities, nighttime often carried a remarkable sense of openness. Once fires dimmed and candlelight faded, darkness stretched outward across forests, fields, rivers, and hills with very little interruption. Without artificial lighting flooding the horizon, the stars appeared extraordinarily bright above sleeping villages and isolated homes. Travelers from later centuries frequently described the pre-industrial night sky with awe. In places untouched by modern light pollution, the Milky Way spread clearly overhead like a pale river of light crossing the darkness. Constellations reflected softly across lakes and rivers, while moonlight illuminated roads, rooftops, trees, and distant mountains in silver-blue tones. For people living in those worlds, the night sky remained a constant presence, woven naturally into ordinary life. Researchers studying circadian rhythms believe this close relationship with natural darkness strongly influenced sleep patterns for thousands of years. Human biology evolved beneath cycles of sunrise, sunset, moonlight, and seasonal variation long before artificial light changed nighttime behavior so dramatically. During clear nights, moonlight itself sometimes shaped activity. Farmers, travelers, sailors, and fishermen often adjusted routines according to the brightness of the moon. In some regions, people walked long distances beneath moonlit roads, quiet enough to hear distant rivers or wind moving gently through grasslands. Inside homes, sleep environments remained deeply connected to weather and season. During heavy rain, the sound of water falling steadily against rooftops often filled entire rooms through the night. In colder regions, winter winds pressed softly against wooden walls, while snow accumulated silently outside, beside dim lanterns glowing through frosted windows. Summer nights carried different rhythms entirely. Windows remained partially open to allow cool air inside, while insects hummed softly in fields beyond sleeping homes. The scent of forests, rain-soaked earth, rivers, or ocean air drifted through darkened rooms, while distant thunder rolled quietly across warm nighttime skies. Researchers increasingly believed that these softer natural soundscapes affected human relaxation profoundly. Unlike the sudden mechanical sounds common in modern cities, natural nighttime sounds often move rhythmically and predictably, allowing the nervous system to remain calm while drifting towards sleep. Even silence itself felt different then. Modern silence is rare and often fragile, interrupted constantly by distant engines, electronics, traffic, or notifications. But in many older rural environments, true stillness could settle across entire landscapes during the deepest hours of the night. Villages slept, roads emptied, fields darkened completely. And beneath the slow movement of stars overhead, the world seemed to breathe more quietly. In many parts of the world, people also slept much closer together than modern societies often do today. Entire families sometimes shared single rooms, particularly during winter, where warmth became as important as comfort itself. Beds were practical spaces shaped by climate, available materials, and survival rather than luxury. Yet despite the simplicity, these nighttime environments often carried a deep sense of closeness and quiet familiarity. Inside medieval cottages, mountain cabins, fishing villages, and countryside homes, the final hours before sleep usually unfolded slowly. Fireplaces glowed softly across wooden beams, darkened by years of smoke. Thick blankets made from wool, linen, or animal hides trapped warmth against cold nighttime air. Candles burned carefully because every flame required labor, wax, oil, or fuel that could not easily be wasted. Researchers studying historical domestic life noticed that the limited reach of candlelight naturally reduced activity as evening deepened. A single candle illuminated only a small area, encouraging quieter conversation, storytelling, sewing, reading, or silent reflection before sleep gradually arrived. There were no brightly lit kitchens at midnight, no glowing screens pulling attention endlessly forward, no constant stimulation demanding wakefulness long after exhaustion appeared. Instead, darkness slowly encouraged rest. Children often fell asleep first, beside the warmth of the fire, while adults continued speaking softly nearby. Elderly family members sometimes remained awake longer, listening quietly to weather outside or tending fading embers before finally settling into bed themselves. In fishing communities, distant ocean waves mixed with the sound of wind pressing gently against small homes near the shore. In colder northern regions, winter nights could feel especially long and quiet. Snow absorbed sound across forests and empty roads, creating an unusual stillness beneath moonlit skies. Travelers crossing villages late at night sometimes described seeing only faint amber light glowing behind frost-covered windows while smoke drifted upward into the freezing air. And because darkness remained so complete beyond those homes, indoor spaces often felt deeply sheltered and intimate by comparison. Researchers who study environmental psychology today suggest that humans naturally relax in spaces combining warmth, low lighting, soft repetitive sound, and physical shelter. Ancient sleeping environments unintentionally created many of these conditions automatically through firelight, darkness, weather, and shared communal rhythms. Even bedtime routines themselves moved more gently. Rather than switching abruptly from stimulation into sleep, many people transitioned gradually through long, quiet evenings shaped by repetitive tasks and dim light. The nervous system had time to slow naturally, In monasteries, isolated farms and rural villages, nighttime sometimes carried almost no artificial sound at all, beyond the crackling of firewood, distant wind, rainfall, insects, or quiet breathing from sleeping family members nearby. These subtle sounds became deeply familiar parts of human rest for countless generations. And perhaps because the outside world disappeared so completely into darkness, sleep itself often felt more connected to nature's rhythm than to human schedules. The stars moved slowly overhead, while entire communities drifted into silence together beneath the calm and endless night sky. As the night deepened across ancient towns and countryside roads, human life often became remarkably still. Without electric lighting extending activity late into the evening, most communities slowly quieted together after sunset. Shops closed earlier, roads emptied, fires dimmed low inside homes, while darkness spread gently across forests, rivers, hillsides, and sleeping villages. In many ways, the night itself became a shared experience. Researchers studying pre-industrial societies noticed that people were often far more synchronized with one another biologically than modern populations tend to be today. Entire communities followed similar rhythms shaped by daylight, weather, seasons, and agricultural life. Morning began with sunrise, evening gradually softened into darkness. Sleep arrived more collectively rather than individually scattered across endless hours of artificial light. This slower rhythm changed the emotional feeling of nighttime profoundly. Today, modern cities remain active 24 hours a day. Traffic continues through midnight. Screens glow constantly from apartment windows. Notifications, advertisements, and artificial brightness keep attention fragmented long after the body begins asking for rest. But in older worlds, the transition into sleep often unfolded with far less resistance. The darkness itself encouraged stillness. Inside small homes, the final sounds of the evening sometimes became deeply repetitive and comforting. The soft movement of rocking chairs beside fireplaces, quiet footsteps across wooden floors, wind moving through nearby trees, rain settling steadily against rooftops, water flowing gently beside villages built near rivers and streams. These rhythms repeated night after night across generations. Researchers who study sleep environments today often note that repetitive natural sound patterns can help calm the nervous system because they remain predictable and non-threatening. Ocean waves, rainfall, crackling firewood, and distant wind do not demand urgent attention from the brain the way sudden alarms, traffic, or digital notifications do. Perhaps that is one reason modern people still find these sounds deeply relaxing. The human nervous system evolved for thousands of years within quieter environments shaped primarily by weather, darkness, and natural rhythms rather than mechanical stimulation. Nighttime also created rare moments of stillness where reflection became easier. In candlelit rooms, after long days of physical work, many people spent quiet hours simply resting beside family, observing firelight, or listening to storms passing slowly outside. There was often little pressure to remain productive every moment before sleep. In isolated rural regions especially, darkness could feel enormous. Beyond the final glow of candlelight, forests and open fields disappeared completely into shadow, while stars spread across the sky in extraordinary detail. Travelers sometimes described hearing only distant rivers, insects, or the sound of horses moving quietly along empty roads beneath moonlight. The world felt slower then, not because people lacked hardship or responsibility, but because darkness naturally limited activity and encouraged pause. And somewhere during those long, quiet nights, while fireplaces burned softly inside wooden homes and snow drifted silently across sleeping villages, countless human beings closed their eyes beneath the stars and drifted into sleep within a world far quieter than the one most people know today. As researchers continued studying historical sleep habits and nighttime life before electricity, they slowly began understanding that the greatest difference may not have been the beds people slept in, the candles they used, or even the length of the night itself. The deepest difference was the overall rhythm surrounding human rest. Night once arrived as a gradual transformation, affecting entire landscapes together, softening villages, roads, homes, forests, and human attention, all at the same time beneath the growing darkness. In the modern world, the mind rarely experiences that kind of collective slowing anymore. Artificial light allows activity to continue endlessly, separating human schedules from the natural movement of sunset and darkness that guided sleep for thousands of years. Streets remain illuminated through midnight, screens continue glowing beside beds, and the nervous system often stays partially alert long after the body begins needing rest. But before electricity, the night itself gently encouraged people towards stillness because almost everything around them moved more quietly together. Historical descriptions of nighttime often carry an atmosphere modern life rarely preserves now. In mountain villages, snow reflected pale moonlight across silent rooftops, while warm firelight flickered behind small windows. In fishing towns near the sea, waves moved slowly through the darkness, while lanterns glowed faintly beside docks and empty roads. In forests, wind drifted softly through trees surrounding isolated cabins, where families rested together beneath thick blankets while rain tapped gently against wooden walls through the long night. And because darkness remained so complete outside those homes, indoor spaces often felt deeply peaceful by comparison. The final sounds before sleep were usually simple and repetitive: crackling firewood, distant weather, quiet conversation fading slowly into silence, soft breathing from sleeping family members nearby, or the steady rhythm of rain continuing outside until morning. These were the sounds surrounding human sleep for generation after generation, long before modern noise became constant. Researchers who study circadian biology today increasingly believe that the human nervous system still carries traces of those older rhythms. Even now, many people relax naturally beside candlelight, ocean waves, rainfall, fireplace sounds, snowfall, or dim, warm lighting, because these environments resemble conditions human beings once experienced almost every night throughout history. The brain responds to predictable darkness and gentle sound in ways shaped by thousands of years spent sleeping much closer to nature than modern life usually allows. Perhaps that is why old nighttime imagery still feels comforting to so many people today. A small cabin glowing softly during snowfall, a lantern beside a quiet road beneath the stars, rain falling steadily against windows while firelight warms a silent room. These scenes awaken something familiar deep inside the nervous system, even for people living surrounded by modern technology and artificial light. Tonight, we traveled slowly through ancient nights shaped by candlelight, segmented sleep, shared homes, moonlit roads, snowfall, rainfall, distant stars, and quiet villages resting beneath enormous skies untouched by electricity. We explored a world where darkness itself helped guide the human mind gently towards stillness and rest. And somewhere beyond the noise of modern cities, There are still places where the night arrives softly across forests, mountains, lakes, and sleeping homes, much as it once did centuries ago, carrying with it the same calm darkness beneath which countless generations quietly closed their eyes and drifted into sleep. Act 4. The quiet rituals before sleep. Long before modern bedtime routines became shaped by electric light, television, phones, and glowing screens, evenings followed slower and more repetitive patterns closely tied to the natural rhythm of darkness itself. For most people, preparing for sleep was not a sudden moment separating day from night, but a gradual transition unfolding quietly across several hours as homes softened into candlelight and silence. In small villages, farming communities, monasteries, fishing towns, and isolated countryside homes, the final part of the evening often carried a deeply familiar atmosphere, repeated almost unchanged across generations. After long hours of physical labor outdoors, families slowly gathered inside while darkness settled across fields and roads beyond the windows. Fires were adjusted carefully for warmth. Candles were lit sparingly to conserve wax or oil. Meals simmered quietly over fireplaces, while the cold night air pressed gently against wooden walls outside. Because artificial light remained limited and expensive, nighttime activity naturally became calmer and more focused. People rarely flooded entire rooms with brightness. Instead, small pools of warm light illuminated only portions of a space, leaving the edges of rooms softened by moving shadows and darkness. This created an environment where conversation, reading, sewing, prayer, storytelling, or silent reflection unfolded slowly without the overstimulation common in modern evenings. Researchers studying historical domestic life noticed how repetitive these nighttime routines often were. Animals were checked one final time before rest. Doors were secured against weather and wind. Firewood was arranged carefully to last through colder hours before dawn. Heavy blankets were warmed beside the fireplace before being carried to beds. In winter especially, every movement inside the home became quieter and more deliberate, as families prepared to settle into the long darkness ahead. In many homes, children fell asleep first beside the warmth of the fire, while adults continued speaking softly nearby. Elderly family members sometimes remained awake slightly longer, tending embers or listening to weather outside before finally retreating to bed themselves. The transition into sleep therefore happened gradually rather than abruptly. Evenings slowly dissolved into stillness while candle flames dimmed lower across the room. Researchers who study the nervous system today often emphasize how strongly repetition and predictable environmental cues affect relaxation. The human brain tends to calm itself more easily within familiar rhythms and low-stimulation environments. Ancient nighttime routines unintentionally supported this process naturally through darkness, repetitive tasks, warmth, gentle sound, and limited sensory input. The atmosphere surrounding sleep also changed with the seasons. During winter, evenings became especially long and quiet, encouraging extended periods of indoor rest beneath candlelight and snowfall. In summer, cooler night air drifted through partially open windows while insects hummed softly outside beneath moonlit skies. Rainstorms, distant thunder, moving wind, and crackling fireplaces became part of the sensory landscape surrounding sleep itself. And because so much of life depended on daylight, there was often little reason to remain mentally active deep into the night. The world outside gradually disappeared into darkness, while homes became calmer, quieter, and warmer beside fading firelight. Somewhere in the distance, church bells might echo softly through cold air before silence settled once more across sleeping villages beneath the stars. In many parts of the world, the final hour before sleep often became one of the calmest moments of the entire day. The hard physical labor of daylight had ended, roads were emptying, animals had settled for the night, and darkness outside reduced the pressure to continue working or moving constantly. Inside, homes lit only by candlelight or glowing embers, people naturally slowed their voices, movements, and thoughts as the night deepened around them. Researchers studying historical evening routines found that repetitive nighttime habits played an important role in helping people transition gently into rest. Clothing was folded carefully near the bed for the following morning. Boots and tools were placed beside doors after long days outdoors. Water was carried inside before temperatures dropped overnight. Fires were adjusted to provide enough warmth until dawn, without consuming too much wood before morning arrived. Because many families shared sleeping spaces together, the atmosphere before sleep often carried a quiet sense of closeness and familiarity. Children listened to stories while lying beneath blankets near the fire. Parents spoke softly beside fading candlelight, while weather moved gently outside. Elderly relatives sometimes recited prayers or reflected silently before drifting into sleep themselves. The darkness surrounding the home seemed to encourage slower conversation and quieter attention naturally. In monasteries and religious communities, nighttime rituals became even more structured. Candles glowed dimly through long stone corridors, while monks prepared for evening prayer before sleep. Ancient bells echoed softly through cold nighttime air, while rain drifted across monastery roofs and distant forests disappeared into darkness beyond the walls. Some communities woke again during the middle of the night for quiet prayer before returning to rest beneath the remaining hours of darkness. Researchers today believe these slower transitions into sleep may have supported healthier circadian rhythms than many modern evening habits allow. Exposure to low warm lighting, repetitive calming behavior, physical exhaustion from daytime labor, and the gradual disappearance of stimulation all encourage the nervous system to shift naturally toward rest. The contrast with modern evenings can feel striking. Today, many people move directly from bright screens, rapid information, artificial lighting, and mental overstimulation into bed within only a few moments. The nervous system often receives very little time to disengage from activity before sleep is expected to arrive instantly. But in older worlds, darkness itself helped create separation between daytime activity and nighttime rest. The fading of light became part of the psychological process, preparing the mind for sleep. Outside those homes, the night carried its own quiet rhythm. Rain moved steadily across rooftops. Wind brushed softly through trees and empty roads. Snow reflected pale moonlight across silent fields during winter. Rivers flowed quietly beside sleeping villages, while distant stars turned slowly overhead, beyond the reach of firelight and candlelight below. And somewhere within those warm, dimly lit rooms, countless people slowly drifted towards sleep, surrounded not by endless stimulation, but by silence, repetition, warmth, and the calm darkness that shaped human nights for thousands of years before electricity changed the rhythm of the world forever. As the evening continued in these older worlds, the atmosphere inside homes often became softer and quieter with every passing hour. Candle flames burned lower. Fireplaces settled into slow, glowing embers. Conversations gradually faded into long stretches of silence, while the sounds of weather outside became more noticeable in the stillness of the night. Without artificial brightness keeping entire households alert late into the evening, people naturally followed the slow rhythm of darkness surrounding them. Researchers studying historical sleep environments often describe how deeply connected pre-industrial life remained to seasonal change. During winter, nights could feel extraordinarily long, encouraging extended periods of indoor rest beneath blankets warmed beside the fire. Snowfall softened entire landscapes outside, while cold air pressed gently against doors and windows through the night. In contrast, summer evenings carried cooler breezes drifting through partially open windows, while insects hummed softly across fields beneath moonlit skies. Because many homes lacked strong insulation, people remained highly aware of weather even while indoors. Rainfall, distant thunder, shifting wind, ocean waves, or moving tree branches all became part of the sensory environment surrounding sleep itself. These sounds repeated night after night for generations, shaping the emotional atmosphere of rest in ways modern cities rarely preserve anymore. In isolated countryside homes especially, darkness outside often became almost complete after candlelight faded. Roads disappeared entirely beyond small pools of firelight. Forests became silhouettes beneath the stars. Lakes and rivers reflected moonlight quietly through the darkness, while distant mountains faded into the night sky itself. Travelers moving through rural regions after sunset frequently described the strange stillness of those landscapes once villages had fallen asleep. Inside homes, bedtime itself unfolded gently rather than suddenly. Families sometimes remained awake together for long periods, simply resting beside the warmth of the fire, while exhaustion settled naturally across the room. Children drifted into sleep slowly beneath thick blankets, while adults continued speaking softly nearby. In some homes, storytelling remained part of the nighttime rhythm for generations, with old legends, family histories, religious teachings, or simple memories shared quietly before sleep. Researchers who study relaxation and sleep today often note that the nervous system responds strongly to familiarity, repetition, warmth, predictable sound, and low lighting. Many ancient nighttime environments unintentionally combined all of these elements together. Firelight moved rhythmically across walls and ceilings. Rain and wind created continuous natural soundscapes. Darkness reduced visual stimulation. Physical labor created deep bodily fatigue by evening. The entire environment gradually encouraged the mind to let go of alertness. And perhaps because the outside world became so quiet after sunset, sleep itself often carried a deeper feeling of retreat from ordinary life. Once the final candles disappeared and the last sounds inside the home faded into silence, the night stretched endlessly beyond those walls, beneath stars bright enough to illuminate rivers, rooftops, forests, and empty roads far into the distance. For countless generations, human beings closed their eyes within this slower world, where darkness, weather, silence, and firelight shaped the rhythm of rest far more than schedules, alarms, or glowing screens ever would. As historians, neuroscientists, and sleep researchers continued examining life before electricity, many began realizing that ancient nighttime routines were not simply old-fashioned habits lost to history. They reflected a completely different relationship between human beings, darkness, and rest itself. The night once unfolded slowly enough for the nervous system to follow it naturally, without the constant interruption of artificial brightness, endless information, or continuous stimulation. In the modern world, evening often feels compressed. Many people remain mentally active until the final moments before bed, surrounded by screens, notifications, artificial light, and crowded schedules that keep attention moving constantly from one task to another. The body may feel exhausted, yet the mind continues racing long after darkness has arrived outside. But in older societies, the transition into sleep was usually far more gradual. Candlelight softened rooms naturally. Physical labor created deep fatigue by nightfall. Villages quieted together beneath darkness. Roads emptied. Fires burned low. The entire environment slowly encouraged the brain to move towards stillness over the course of several peaceful hours. Researchers who study circadian biology increasingly believe that the human nervous system still responds strongly to these ancient environmental cues. Warm, low lighting, repetitive evening rituals, predictable natural sounds, darkness, cooler nighttime temperatures, and slower transitions away from stimulation all appear to support relaxation and healthier sleep patterns even today. Perhaps that is why modern people continue searching for experiences that resemble those older nights. Rainfall recordings, fireplace sounds, candlelit rooms, cabins in snowy forests, ocean waves, trains moving quietly through darkness, and peaceful nighttime landscapes all recreate fragments of the slower atmosphere human beings once experienced almost every evening throughout history. The mind seems to recognize these environments instinctively. There is something deeply calming about imagining a warm room glowing softly beside winter snowfall while the outside world disappears into silence. Something comforting about distant thunder moving slowly across dark hills beyond candlelit windows. Something peaceful about old villages resting beneath moonlight while forests and rivers fade quietly into darkness around them. These images continue relaxing people not only because they are beautiful, but because they reflect rhythms the human nervous system knew for thousands of years before modern life transformed the night into something endlessly awake. Tonight, we traveled through quiet rituals before sleep, candlelit homes, winter evenings, monastery corridors, shared firesides, moonlit roads, and ancient villages where darkness itself helped guide human beings gently toward rest. We explored a slower world where the night unfolded patiently around sleeping communities beneath enormous star-filled skies untouched by electricity. And somewhere far beyond the brightness of modern cities, there are still quiet places where the final candle fades softly beside the window. Rain moves steadily through the darkness outside, and the night settles slowly across forests, rivers, mountains, and sleeping homes much as it once did centuries ago. Act 5. Nights at sea in forests and along silent roads. For much of human history, many people spent their nights far from permanent homes entirely. Sailors crossed dark oceans beneath endless stars. Travelers moved slowly along moonlit roads between distant towns. And hunters, merchants, pilgrims, and wanderers slept beside forests, rivers, mountains, or open fields beneath the cold night sky. Long before modern transportation flooded the world with constant movement and artificial light, nighttime travel carried a far quieter and more uncertain atmosphere, shaped almost entirely by darkness itself. On the open sea, nights often felt enormous. Ships drifted through black water, illuminated only by moonlight, lanterns, and the stars overhead. The soundscape surrounding sleep aboard wooden vessels remained simple and repetitive. Waves striking gently against the hull, ropes shifting softly in the wind, distant creaking wood, and slow rhythmic movement beneath the feet of exhausted sailors resting below deck. Researchers who study repetitive motion and sleep environments often note that gentle rhythmic movement can calm the nervous system significantly. The slow rocking of ships, trains, hammocks, or ocean waves resembles patterns that naturally encourage relaxation and drowsiness in many people. For sailors crossing vast oceans centuries ago, sleep often arrived surrounded by these continuous soft motions beneath skies untouched by artificial light. The stars themselves became essential companions during those journeys. Long before modern navigation systems existed, sailors relied heavily on constellations, moon phases, and the movement of celestial bodies to guide them through darkness across enormous distances. Nighttime at sea therefore created an unusually intimate relationship between human beings and the sky above them. Historical descriptions from sailors frequently mention the overwhelming stillness of calm nights far from land. The ocean stretched endlessly into darkness, while stars reflected softly across black water in every direction. Lantern light glowed dimly beside sleeping crews, wrapped in blankets, against cold wind drifting through the rigging overhead. Travelers crossing forests and countryside roads experienced very different nights, yet many carried the same deep silence modern life rarely preserves anymore. Roads outside major towns often became almost completely dark after sunset. Inns and roadside shelters provided warmth and candlelight for those fortunate enough to reach them before night fully settled across the landscape. In colder regions, travelers sometimes described snow-covered roads, illuminated only by moonlight, while forests stood silent beside the path for miles at a time. Horses moved steadily through the darkness, while distant church bells occasionally echoed faintly across valleys before silence returned again. Inside roadside inns, nighttime unfolded quietly around fireplaces glowing beside weary travelers escaping cold rain, winter storms, or ocean wind outside. Wet coats dried near the fire. Warm soup simmered slowly in kitchens. Candlelight flickered softly across wooden beams, darkened by years of smoke, while exhausted travelers rested together beneath the shelter of the inn. And because travel itself moved more slowly then, nights often felt less rushed. Journeys unfolded across days, weeks, or even months, allowing darkness to become part of the rhythm of movement rather than merely an obstacle to overcome. Somewhere beyond the glow of lanterns and fireplaces, forests, mountains, rivers, and empty roads disappeared quietly into the ancient night beneath the stars. For travelers moving through the world before electricity, the arrival of night often changed the emotional feeling of the journey completely. Daytime roads carried movement, conversation, trade, and activity. But once darkness settled across the landscape, everything slowed dramatically. Villages became quieter, forests deeper, rivers darker, and distant lanterns far more noticeable against the enormous blackness surrounding them. In many regions, travel after sunset became difficult, not because roads disappeared physically, but because darkness itself transformed the environment into something softer, slower, and far less certain. Moonlight illuminated only parts of the path ahead, while forests and hills faded almost entirely into shadow. Travelers frequently depended on memory, stars, distant fires, or familiar landmarks to continue safely through the night. Yet despite these challenges, Historical descriptions of nighttime journeys often carry a surprising sense of calmness. Without engines, electric lights, or constant mechanical sound, roads could become extraordinarily silent after dark. The slow rhythm of horse hooves against dirt roads, wagon wheels turning softly across frozen ground, or the sound of wind moving through trees sometimes became the only noise for miles. Researchers who study relaxation and environmental psychology today often note that predictable, repetitive sound patterns can help quiet the nervous system naturally. In older worlds, many nighttime journeys unfolded within exactly those kinds of soundscapes: steady movement, distant weather, gentle wind, flowing rivers, rainfall, or ocean waves repeating continuously beneath the darkness. For sailors especially, nighttime often became one of the quietest parts of life at sea. Once lanterns dimmed across the deck and most of the crew settled below, only a few remained awake beneath the stars, while the ship moved slowly through black water illuminated faintly by moonlight. Endless waves rolled quietly into the darkness, while cold sea air drifted through the rigging overhead. Many sailors described the strange peace of those hours far from land. With no cities visible on the horizon and no artificial light surrounding the ship, the stars appeared almost impossibly bright above the ocean. Reflections shimmered across the water, while clouds drifted silently through the night sky overhead. Inside small sleeping quarters below deck, exhausted sailors rested within the slow, constant motion of the sea itself. Wood creaked softly around them, while storms moved far away across the horizon, or rain tapped steadily against the ship through the long darkness before dawn. Travelers sleeping outdoors experienced the night differently again. Beneath forests, mountains, or open skies, campfires became small islands of warmth and light, surrounded by enormous darkness. Flames crackled softly, while blankets, cloaks, and heavy coats protected against cold nighttime air drifting through the trees. Researchers believe firelight may affect relaxation differently from modern lighting because of its soft, rhythmic movement and warm color. For countless generations, human beings ended their evenings beside flickering flames rather than harsh, artificial brightness. The nervous system became deeply familiar with these slower patterns of light and shadow surrounding rest. And somewhere along those ancient roads, beneath snowfall, rainstorms, moonlit forests, or star-filled skies reflected across quiet rivers, countless travelers slowly drifted into sleep beside fading firelight while the world around them settled gently into darkness. In isolated parts of the world, the night could feel almost impossibly large once the final lanterns disappeared behind distant hills or forests. Travelers crossing mountain roads, sailors drifting far from shore, shepherds resting beside quiet valleys, and merchants sleeping beneath open skies all experienced a kind of darkness that modern cities rarely allow anymore. Without artificial light spreading endlessly across the horizon, the natural world remained visible at night in ways difficult for many people to imagine today. The stars alone often provided enough light to shape the landscape softly beneath them. Rivers reflected pale moonlight through silent valleys, while snowy mountain paths glowed faintly beneath winter skies. In open grasslands, wind moved gently through tall fields beneath constellations, bright enough to guide travelers across enormous distances without roads clearly visible ahead. Historical journals from travelers frequently described the emotional stillness of these nighttime environments. Once fires dimmed low and conversation faded, only the sounds of nature remained. distant water moving through darkness, insects humming beside warm summer fields, rain tapping steadily against canvas shelters, or wind drifting through trees beneath the stars. Researchers who study human relaxation today increasingly believe that environments combining darkness, rhythmic sound, warmth, and low visual stimulation naturally encourage the nervous system toward calmness. For most of history, these conditions surrounded human sleep almost every night, whether people rested inside wooden homes beside campfires, aboard ships, or beneath open skies. Even nighttime fears often unfolded differently in those older worlds. Darkness certainly carried uncertainty, especially in forests or unfamiliar regions, but because people lived far more closely connected to natural cycles, the night itself was not always treated as an interruption or enemy to resist constantly. Instead, darkness became a familiar part of ordinary existence, shaping travel, rest, weather, work, and human routine together. Inside roadside inns, travelers from different regions often gathered quietly beside fireplaces after long journeys through rain, snow, or ocean wind. Wet boots dried beside glowing embers, while warm meals and candlelight created small islands of comfort against the cold darkness outside. Horses rested in nearby stables, while storms moved slowly across empty roads beyond the windows. In some coastal towns, fishermen left before dawn, beneath stars reflected across black water, while entire villages remained asleep behind them. Lanterns swayed softly beside docks as waves rolled quietly against wooden piers through the cold night air. Far offshore, ships appeared only as tiny distant lights drifting silently across the horizon beneath enormous skies. And because travel itself moved more slowly, people often spent far longer observing the night than modern life usually allows. Journeys unfolded gradually across changing weather, seasons, landscapes, and long stretches of darkness between destinations. The stars became familiar companions. Moonlight shaped the road ahead. Rainfall, ocean waves, snowfall, and firelight became deeply woven into the emotional atmosphere surrounding rest itself. Somewhere beneath those ancient skies, while forests darkened around empty roads and waves carried ships quietly through the night sea, countless human beings closed their eyes beside fading lanterns and drifting embers, allowing the slow rhythm of darkness to carry them gently towards sleep. As historians and sleep researchers reflected on these older nighttime journeys, many realized that travel before electricity carried a completely different relationship with darkness than modern life usually allows today. Night was not something immediately erased by endless artificial brightness. It remained present, shaping movement, silence, weather, rest, and human attention across entire landscapes once the sun disappeared. In the modern world, roads remain illuminated through the night, cities glow continuously across the horizon, and travel rarely pauses completely after sunset. Planes cross oceans beneath artificial cabin light, highways remain crowded until morning, and screens continue demanding attention no matter how late the hour becomes. Darkness itself has largely retreated from daily experience in many places. But for countless generations, human beings moved through a far quieter world after sunset. Roads faded gently into moonlight. Ships drifted beneath constellations reflected across black water. Forests settled into stillness, while travelers rested beside fires, glowing softly against the cold night air. Entire villages disappeared into silence beneath stars bright enough to illuminate rivers, mountains, fields, and distant coastlines. Researchers who study circadian rhythms and environmental psychology increasingly believe that the human nervous system still responds deeply to these ancient nighttime conditions. Rhythmic movement, low, warm lighting, repetitive natural sound, darkness, predictable environments, and gradual transitions into rest all appear to calm the brain in ways shaped by thousands of years of human experience before modern electrical life transformed the night completely. Perhaps that is why so many people today continue finding comfort in imagery connected to older journeys through darkness. A lantern glowing softly beside a snowy road, rain falling steadily against the windows of a distant inn, ocean waves moving beneath moonlight while a ship drifts quietly through the night, a small campfire flickering beneath enormous stars somewhere deep inside a silent forest. These scenes feel peaceful, not only because they are beautiful, but because they reflect environments the human mind once knew intimately for generation after generation. Tonight, we traveled slowly through moonlit roads, candlelit inns, dark forests, quiet oceans, snowfall, rainstorms, and distant stars above ancient travelers moving gently through the night before electricity changed the rhythm of the world forever. We explored a quieter age, where darkness remained vast and uninterrupted, allowing sleep and stillness to settle naturally across roads, rivers, villages, mountains, and open seas beneath the calm movement of the stars overhead. And somewhere far from modern highways and city lights, there are still silent roads where lanterns glow softly through the darkness. Rain drifts quietly across old rooftops, and travelers rest beside warm firelight while the ancient night continues unfolding slowly around them, much as it once did centuries ago. Act 6. The sound of rain, fire, and wind. Long before recorded sound existed, human beings fell asleep surrounded almost entirely by the natural rhythms of the world itself. Rainfall against rooftops, wind moving through forests, waves reaching distant shores, insects humming across summer fields, and firewood crackling softly beside darkened rooms became part of the atmosphere surrounding sleep for countless generations. In many ways, the night once sounded very different from the modern world. Today, even quiet environments often contain distant engines, electrical hums, traffic, electronics, alarms, refrigeration systems, or artificial noise drifting continuously through homes and cities. Truly deep silence has become increasingly rare in modern life. But before electricity and industrialization transformed human environments, the sounds surrounding sleep were often softer, slower, and more closely connected to weather and nature itself. Researchers studying relaxation and sleep environments today frequently observe that many people instinctively calm themselves using sounds resembling those older nighttime conditions. Rainfall recordings, ocean waves, crackling fireplaces, gentle wind, and distant thunder remain among the most widely used sounds for relaxation and sleep across the modern world. Scientists believe part of this response may emerge because the human nervous system evolved for thousands of years within these kinds of predictable natural soundscapes. Rain especially seems to affect the mind in unusual ways. Historical descriptions of nighttime life often mention rain moving steadily across rooftops, while families slept beside warm fireplaces inside wooden homes. During storms, candlelight flickered softly against walls, while water flowed through dark roads and fields outside. Entire villages became quieter beneath the steady rhythm of rainfall continuing through the night. Researchers studying repetitive sound patterns sometimes describe rainfall as naturally calming because it remains continuous, soft, and non-threatening to the nervous system. Unlike sudden mechanical noises that demand attention, rain tends to blend into the background gently, allowing the brain to relax rather than remain alert. Firelight and fireplaces also shaped human sleep environments for centuries. In colder regions especially, fires often remained burning through much of the night to preserve warmth inside homes during winter. The sound of crackling wood, shifting embers, and soft-moving flames became deeply familiar nighttime sensations repeated across generations. Scientists who study environmental comfort often note that firelight differs dramatically from modern artificial lighting. Flames move slowly and unpredictably in soft rhythmic patterns, while producing warm amber tones that create a calmer atmosphere than harsh, bright illumination. For thousands of years, human beings ended their evenings beside this kind of light rather than beneath electric brightness. Wind carried its own nighttime rhythm as well. In forests, mountain villages, and coastal regions, the sound of moving air often became part of sleep itself. Curtains shifted softly beside windows. Trees moved gently outside in the darkness. Ocean wind drifted through small fishing towns, while distant storms crossed cold seas beneath the night sky. These sounds connected sleeping people continuously to the environment around them. Even while resting indoors, the human mind remained quietly aware of weather, season, and the natural world moving beyond the walls of the home. In older homes, especially during winter, sound carried differently through the night than it often does in modern insulated buildings. Wooden walls creaked softly as temperatures changed. Wind pressed gently against shutters and rooftops, while rain moved steadily through dark streets outside. Fireplaces settled into slow, glowing embers that occasionally cracked or shifted beneath layers of ash. These subtle nighttime sounds became deeply familiar parts of ordinary human rest for centuries. Because artificial noise remained so limited, even small sounds felt more noticeable within the stillness of the night. A distant church bell echoing across snowy fields, horses moving quietly in nearby stables, waves touching wooden docks along fishing villages, or footsteps fading slowly along empty roads could sometimes be heard across remarkable distances once entire communities had fallen asleep. Researchers studying environmental psychology often explain that predictable natural sound patterns tend to calm the nervous system because they rarely signal immediate danger. Ocean waves repeat rhythmically, rainfall maintains soft continuity, wind rises and fades gradually, firewood crackles irregularly but gently. These sounds create environments where the brain can remain relaxed without constantly preparing for sudden interruption. In contrast, many modern nighttime sounds are abrupt and mechanically irregular. Traffic, alarms, phones, engines, and electronic notifications repeatedly pull attention outward, even during moments intended for rest. The nervous system often remains partially alert because the surrounding environment continues demanding attention long after darkness arrives. But in older worlds, nighttime often carried long, uninterrupted stretches of quietness. Entire villages rested beneath snowfall, while only the faint sound of wind moved through trees beyond the rooftops. Rivers flowed softly beside sleeping towns, while stars reflected across black water, untouched by artificial light. In coastal regions, waves rolled steadily through darkness, while lanterns swayed gently beside empty docks. Inside homes, these sounds blended naturally into the atmosphere surrounding sleep. Children drifted asleep beside fireplaces, while storms moved slowly across distant hills. Travelers resting in roadside inns Listen to rainfall tapping steadily against wooden roofs, while horses settled quietly in nearby stables. Sailors, sleeping below deck, heard only waves, creaking timber, and ocean winds surrounding the ship through the long darkness before dawn. Scientists increasingly believe that the human brain still responds deeply to these older sensory environments because they shaped sleep for so much of human history. Warm, low lighting, predictable natural sounds, darkness, rhythmic movement, and gradual transitions into stillness all appear to support relaxation in ways modern, overstimulated environments often disrupt. Perhaps that is why people continue returning to these sounds even now. Rainfall recordings play softly beside beds in crowded cities. Fireplace videos glow on screens during winter evenings. Ocean waves, distant thunder, forest wind, and crackling firewood remain some of the most universally calming sounds across cultures and generations. Somewhere deep inside the mind, these sounds still feel familiar. They carry echoes of countless older nights when human beings rested beside candlelight and fading embers while rain drifted softly through darkness outside and the world moved slowly beneath the stars. During the deepest hours of the night, when fires had burned low and entire villages rested beneath darkness, the natural world often became even more noticeable than it had during the day. Without crowds, machinery, traffic, or electric light filling the environment continuously, small sounds carried softly through forests, across rivers, along coastlines, and between sleeping homes in ways modern life rarely preserves anymore. In mountain regions, wind moved steadily through pine trees beneath cold moonlit skies, while snow settled silently across rooftops and narrow roads below. In fishing villages beside the sea, waves rolled slowly through the darkness, while lanterns glowed faintly near quiet docks where boats drifted gently with the tide. Across open countryside, insects hummed through warm summer grasslands, while distant owls called softly from forests surrounding sleeping farms and isolated cabins. Researchers who study sleep and environmental sound often note that natural nighttime audio landscapes tend to contain large amounts of gentle repetition combined with gradual variation. Rain rises and softens continuously. Ocean waves repeat without demanding attention. Wind moves in long flowing patterns rather than sharp interruptions. Firelight crackles unpredictably, yet remains emotionally soft and non-threatening. These qualities appear especially important for relaxation because they allow awareness to drift naturally rather than remain sharply focused. In older homes, people often fell asleep while remaining quietly aware of the weather outside. Storms approaching in the distance could be heard long before rainfall arrived. Thunder rolled slowly across hills, while candlelight flickered against wooden walls inside warm rooms. During winter, heavy snow absorbed sound so completely that entire villages sometimes seemed suspended in silence beneath pale moonlight. Travelers sleeping outdoors experienced these environments even more directly. Campfires glowed softly against forests and open skies, while rivers moved quietly nearby through the darkness. Horses rested beside wagons beneath constellations, turning slowly overhead. Wind carried the scent of rain, pine trees, wet earth, or ocean air through the night, while exhausted travelers drifted into sleep, wrapped in blankets beside fading embers. Researchers increasingly believe that the human nervous system evolved within environments where darkness and natural sound worked together rather than against one another. Instead of constant stimulation, The night gradually reduced sensory intensity while maintaining soft rhythmic awareness of the world beyond the shelter of the home or campfire. This may partly explain why modern people often feel unexpectedly calm during rainstorms, snowfall, ocean travel, or nights spent in quiet natural environments far from cities. The brain appears deeply responsive to conditions that resemble the slower sensory atmosphere surrounding human sleep for thousands of years, before industrial life transformed the night into something continuously bright and noisy. Even now, there is something profoundly peaceful about hearing rain move steadily against windows while distant wind passes through trees outside in the darkness. Something calming about firelight flickering softly across a quiet room while storms drift slowly through the night beyond the walls. Something deeply familiar about waves repeating endlessly beneath moonlight while the world grows silent around them. For countless generations, these were the sounds surrounding human rest, while darkness settled gently across forests, mountains, rivers, oceans, villages, and sleeping homes beneath the ancient sky. As scientists and historians reflected on the nighttime environment surrounding human sleep throughout history, many began recognizing how dramatically modern life has altered the sensory experience of darkness itself. For thousands of years, most human beings ended their days surrounded primarily by soft, natural sounds, low firelight, gradual silence, weather, and the slow rhythm of the world settling into rest around them. Night once carried a quieter emotional texture that modern environments rarely preserve continuously anymore. Today, even during late hours, the nervous system often remains surrounded by stimulation. Artificial light floods homes and cities through the entire night, while engines, electronics, traffic, screens, and notifications continue demanding attention long after sunset. The modern brain frequently attempts to enter sleep while still immersed in environments designed to maintain alertness rather than encourage stillness. But before electricity transformed human life, darkness naturally reduced activity across entire communities together. Roads emptied, fires dimmed low, conversations softened. The sounds remaining through the night usually came from weather, water, wind, wood, animals, and the quiet movement of nature itself beyond the walls of sleeping homes. Researchers who study relaxation today increasingly believe that the human nervous system still responds deeply to those older sensory conditions. Warm amber lighting, repetitive natural sound, rhythmic motion, cooler nighttime air, and gradual transitions away from stimulation all appear capable of calming the brain because they resemble environments human beings experience night after night throughout most of history. Perhaps that is why people continue searching for these atmospheres even now. Rainfall recordings playing softly beside the bed, fireplace videos glowing during winter evenings, ocean wave soundscapes, train rides through the night, distant thunder, snowfall, and quiet cabins illuminated by lantern light all recreate fragments of a world where darkness once unfolded more slowly around human rest. These experiences often feel comforting, not simply because they are beautiful, but because they echo ancient nighttime rhythms the human mind still recognizes instinctively. Tonight, we traveled through the soundscape of older nights shaped by rainfall, firelight, wind, ocean waves, snow, forests, rivers, candlelit homes, roadside inns, and silent villages resting beneath enormous star-filled skies. We explored how the natural sounds surrounding human sleep once formed a gentle, continuous atmosphere that guided the nervous system gradually towards stillness and rest. And somewhere far beyond the constant glow and noise of modern cities, There are still quiet places where rain drifts steadily across rooftops, waves move softly through darkness, fireplaces crackle beside sleeping rooms, and wind passes gently through trees beneath the night sky, much as it did for countless generations before the modern world learned to remain awake forever. Act 7. The slow return of morning. For most of human history, mornings arrived as gradually as the night before them. There were no glowing phone screens waiting beside the bed, no alarms breaking silence abruptly, and no instant flood of information demanding attention within the first moments of waking. Instead, dawn slowly returned to the world through changing light, distant sound, cold air, and the quiet movement of life beginning again outside sleeping homes. In villages, farms, monasteries, fishing towns, and countryside roads, the first signs of morning often appeared gently. Darkness softened little by little, while pale blue light slowly emerged beyond forests, rivers, hills, and rooftops. Birds began moving through trees. Wind carried the scent of wet earth or cold air through partially opened windows. Somewhere in the distance, church bells or the sound of workers beginning their day echoed softly through the quiet morning landscape. Researchers studying circadian rhythms often explain that the human body responds strongly to gradual exposure to morning light. Long before artificial schedules dominated daily life, sunrise itself helped regulate waking patterns naturally by signaling the brain to reduce melatonin production and increase alertness slowly over time. This meant waking often unfolded less abruptly than it does in many modern environments. Inside older homes, fireplaces were sometimes the first thing to return to life each morning. Embers, buried beneath ash overnight, could still glow faintly before fresh wood was added carefully to warm the room again. Families wrapped themselves in blankets or wool clothing against cold morning air, while candlelight flickered softly beside windows where dawn slowly brightened the world outside. In winter especially, mornings could feel deeply quiet and still. Snow reflected pale early light across rooftops and empty roads, while smoke drifted upward from chimneys into the cold air. The sounds of waking villages remained soft at first, footsteps across wooden floors, distant animals stirring, water being carried indoors, or doors opening carefully against freezing wind. Researchers studying sleep quality today often note that gradual waking environments may feel less stressful to the nervous system than sudden alarms and immediate stimulation. For most of history, the body usually transitioned slowly from sleep into waking awareness through increasing daylight, familiar sound, and gentle movement within the environment itself. Even the pace of the morning remained different. Without instant communication or modern transportation forcing immediate urgency, many people began the day more gradually. Fires were tended, meals prepared slowly, animals cared for before sunrise fully reached the fields and roads. In monasteries, prayers echoed quietly through candlelit halls, while fog drifted softly across silent courtyards outside. The world itself seemed to wake slowly together, and after long nights shaped by darkness, rain, snowfall, wind, stars, and candlelight, the return of morning often carried a calm and quiet beauty of its own, while sunlight gradually spread once more across rivers, forests, villages, mountains, and sleeping roads, emerging gently from the night. In many older communities, the beginning of the day followed rhythms shaped more by light, weather, and season than by precise clocks or rigid schedules. Dawn unfolded differently across the year, and human routines adjusted naturally alongside those changing conditions. During summer, early sunlight reached fields, rivers, and village roads long before most modern cities fully awaken today. In winter, mornings remained darker and slower, with cold air and long shadows lingering across snowy landscapes while fires warmed homes against the freezing dawn outside. Researchers studying historical daily life often note that waking before electricity usually involved far less immediate mental stimulation than modern mornings. There were no headlines arriving instantly beside the bed, no messages demanding attention within seconds of waking, and no glowing screens flooding the eyes with brightness before the mind had fully adjusted to consciousness again. Instead, awareness returned gradually through familiar sensory experiences repeated quietly each morning for generations. Inside wooden homes and countryside cottages, the first movements of the day often remained soft and deliberate. Water simmered slowly above fireplaces, while warm bread, porridge, or soup prepared quietly for the morning meal. Windows revealed pale sunlight spreading gently across fields, still covered in mist or snowfall. Animals stirred outside while smoke drifted upward from neighboring homes, beginning to wake one by one beneath the fading night sky. In fishing villages beside the sea, mornings carried different sounds entirely. Waves rolled steadily beneath pale dawn light, while fishermen prepared boats near silent docks, still damp from the cold night air. Lanterns glowed softly against the final darkness before sunrise fully reached the horizon. In mountain communities, snow reflected early morning light across frozen roads and rooftops, while distant forests remained silent beneath winter fog, drifting through the valleys below. Researchers who study the nervous system today increasingly believe that slower transitions between sleep and wakefulness may help regulate stress more effectively than abrupt overstimulation immediately after waking. Ancient mornings often provided exactly this kind of gradual awakening through natural light, predictable routine, physical movement, warmth, and low sensory intensity. Even sounds carried differently during those early hours. Church bells echoed softly across villages, while footsteps moved quietly through still empty roads. Horses shifted inside nearby stables. Birds filled forests and fields with the first sounds of daylight returning after long nighttime silence. Rivers and streams reflected pale morning skies, while fog lifted slowly across lakes and open countryside. The emotional atmosphere of dawn itself also felt different in a world without constant nighttime illumination. After hours of true darkness, the return of sunlight carried a stronger visual presence than it often does in modern cities where artificial brightness remains everywhere through the night. Morning light gradually revealed forests, roads, rooftops, mountains, and distant fields, emerging once more from darkness. And perhaps because the night had been quieter, slower, and more complete, the return of morning often felt gentler too. A calm reawakening of the world beneath pale sunlight after long, peaceful hours shaped by rain, firelight, wind, stars, and silence. As the sun continued rising across older landscapes, the world gradually returned to motion in ways that often felt calmer and more connected to nature than the rapid pace of modern mornings. Light spread slowly across forests, rivers, mountain roads, and sleeping villages, while people resumed daily routines shaped largely by weather, season, and the amount of daylight available before evening returned once again. In farming communities especially, the rhythm of life depended deeply on these natural cycles. Morning chores unfolded quietly beneath cool dawn air, while fields remained covered in dew or mist. Water was carried from wells, animals were fed and guided into pastures, bread baked slowly beside warming fireplaces, while smoke rose gently from chimneys into pale morning skies. Researchers studying historical sleep patterns often note that older societies experienced a far stronger contrast between night and day than modern populations do now. Darkness once arrived more completely, and morning light therefore carried greater psychological presence as it gradually restored visibility, warmth, and activity to the landscape after long hours of silence and shadow. This daily transition may have played an important role in regulating human biological rhythms for thousands of years. Scientists who study circadian systems increasingly believe that regular exposure to natural morning light helps stabilize sleep patterns, mood, hormonal regulation, and energy levels. In older worlds, people encountered these light cycles directly almost every day through outdoor labor, travel, fishing, farming, or life in communities closely connected to the natural environment. Morning itself also unfolded with fewer interruptions. Before industrial schedules and constant digital communication, many people began the day without immediate exposure to large amounts of information or noise. Instead, awareness expanded slowly alongside the returning daylight. Fires warmed homes gradually, conversations remained soft, roads filled little by little as villages fully awakened beneath the growing brightness of morning. In monasteries, dawn often arrived through quiet ritual. Bells echoed softly through stone corridors, while candlelight faded beside windows slowly filling with pale, early sunlight. Monks crossed silent courtyards beneath cold morning air, while distant forests emerged from darkness around the monastery walls. In fishing towns, boats drifted quietly away from shore, while ocean mist moved across the water beneath the first light of day. Travelers continuing long journeys after sunrise experienced another kind of stillness entirely. Roads remained peaceful during the earliest morning hours, while fog lingered across valleys and forests beside the path. Horses moved steadily through cool air, while distant mountains brightened gradually beneath the rising sun. And perhaps because nights had unfolded more slowly and naturally, mornings often carried less emotional urgency than modern life frequently demands today. The mind awakened within a quieter sensory environment where daylight returned gently across familiar landscapes shaped by weather, season, silence, and the gradual movement of the natural world itself. For countless generations, human beings opened their eyes each morning not to alarms, glowing screens, or crowded schedules, but to the slow return of sunlight spreading once more across rivers, forests, villages, fields, and sleeping roads beneath the calm rhythm of another beginning day. As researchers continued exploring how human beings once lived before electricity transformed the modern world, many began realizing that older nights and mornings were connected by a rhythm far slower and more continuous than the one most people experience today. Darkness arrived gradually, sleep unfolded within quieter environments, and dawn returned softly through natural light and familiar sound rather than sudden stimulation. The human nervous system evolved within those rhythms for thousands of years. For countless generations, people ended their evenings beside firelight, candlelight, rainfall, ocean wind, snowfall, distant rivers, or quiet forests beneath enormous star-filled skies, untouched by artificial brightness. Entire communities slowed together after sunset, while roads emptied, conversations softened, and the world itself seemed to rest beneath darkness. Then morning arrived gently once more. Pale light spread across rooftops and fields. Birds moved through trees beside sleeping homes. Church bells echoed through cold air, while smoke drifted upward from warming fireplaces. Rivers reflected the first sunlight of the day, while villages gradually awakened beneath changing skies shaped by weather and season. Researchers who study sleep, circadian biology, and environmental psychology increasingly believe that many modern sleep difficulties may partly emerge from how dramatically these ancient rhythms changed within only a very small period of human history. Artificial light extended daytime indefinitely. Cities remained active through the entire night. Screens and constant stimulation reduced the natural transition between waking and rest that once unfolded slowly around nearly every human community on Earth. Yet despite those changes, the human mind still appears deeply responsive to the quieter environments surrounding sleep throughout history. Rainfall still calms people. Firelight still feels comforting. Ocean waves, snowstorms, forest wind, distant thunder, trains moving through the night, candlelit rooms and quiet cabins beneath winter skies continue creating a sense of peace for millions of people even now. Perhaps some part of the nervous system still remembers those older nights, the slow fading of candlelight beside wooden walls, the sound of rain moving gently through darkness outside, the warmth of blankets near a fireplace during winter storms, the silence of villages sleeping beneath moonlight and stars, the calm return of dawn spreading slowly across fields and rivers after long, quiet nights. Tonight, we traveled through the world of human sleep before electricity changed the rhythm of life forever. We explored candlelit homes, segmented sleep, snowfall, firelight, monastery corridors, ocean voyages, moonlit roads, quiet inns, rainfall, forests, distant stars, and the slow return of morning across sleeping landscapes untouched by modern noise and artificial light. What emerges from all of these histories is something simple but deeply peaceful. For most of human existence, the night was not filled with endless stimulation. It was a quieter world where darkness itself gently guided the mind toward rest. Before we end, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy peaceful, long-form nighttime documentaries like this one. And in the comments, tell us which atmosphere feels most relaxing to you. Rain against windows, ocean waves, snowfall, firelight, or a quiet cabin beneath the stars. For now, the night continues softly around us, and somewhere beyond the glow of modern cities, rain still drifts across rooftops, lanterns still flicker beside dark windows, and the ancient rhythm of darkness and sleep continues quietly beneath the stars, much as it once did centuries ago. Act 8. The quiet sleep of the ancient world. For most of human history, the night unfolded very differently from the world most people know today. Darkness arrived slowly across forests, rivers, villages, mountains, and empty roads, while candlelight flickered softly behind small windows and fireplaces glowed against wooden walls, warmed by fading embers. Entire communities gradually became quieter together beneath moonlight and stars, untouched by the endless brightness of modern cities. Tonight, we traveled through that older world. We explored how human beings once slept before electricity transformed the rhythm of life forever. We walked through silent medieval villages where snowfall softened every sound beneath the night sky. We sat beside candlelit rooms where families drifted slowly towards sleep while rain tapped gently against rooftops outside. We followed travelers resting beside fading campfires along moonlit roads and sailors crossing dark oceans beneath constellations reflected across black water. We also explored the surprising rhythm of segmented sleep, when many people naturally woke for quiet moments during the middle of the night before drifting peacefully back into what they called the second sleep. We listened to the sounds that once surrounded human rest for countless generations. Wind moving through forests, waves rolling softly beside distant shores, firewood crackling gently in winter homes, church bells echoing faintly through cold air, and rainfall continuing steadily through the darkness until dawn. Researchers studying circadian biology and environmental psychology increasingly believe that the human nervous system still responds deeply to these older nighttime environments. Warm, low lighting, predictable natural sounds, cooler air, gradual transitions into darkness, and slower evening routines all appear capable of calming the brain because they resemble conditions human beings experienced night after night across most of history. Perhaps that is why so many people today still feel peaceful while listening to rainstorms, ocean waves, fireplace sounds, snowfall, distant thunder, or trains moving quietly through the night. These atmospheres carry echoes of an older world, where darkness itself encouraged rest rather than constant stimulation. Modern life rarely allows the night to become truly quiet anymore. Artificial light floods homes and cities through every hour. Screens continue glowing beside beds long after sunset. Information, noise, and movement rarely stop completely. Yet somewhere deep inside the mind, the ancient rhythm of darkness and stillness may still remain familiar. A lantern glowing softly beside a snowy road. A warm cabin illuminated by firelight during a winter storm. Rain moving steadily through darkness outside a quiet room. Ocean waves repeating endlessly beneath moonlit skies. The slow return of dawn across forests and sleeping villages after long, peaceful nights. For countless generations, these were the rhythms surrounding human sleep. And perhaps the reason they still feel comforting today is because the nervous system remembers them. Tonight, we followed the quiet journey of human rest before electricity changed the world forever. We explored candlelit evenings, monastery corridors, silent roads, snowfall, rainfall, firelight, stars, ocean wind, village mornings, and the softer rhythm of nights once shaped almost entirely by nature itself. What remains at the center of all these stories is something simple. Long before the modern world learned to remain awake endlessly, darkness once invited people gently towards stillness, warmth, silence, dreams, and rest. Before you go, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy peaceful, long-form nighttime documentaries like this one. And in the comments, tell us where you are listening from tonight, what time it is there right now, and what kind of nighttime atmosphere helps you relax most deeply. For now, let the night continue quietly around you, and somewhere beyond the distant glow of modern cities, rain still falls softly against old rooftops. Lanterns still flicker beside dark windows, waves still move beneath the moon, and the ancient world of quiet human sleep continues gently beneath the stars.